Dr. Marvin Rabin, it's a great pleasure to have you here at Loyola and as part of a series of amazing works that we do with great artists and great mind in the music profession. We wanted to have you here to share some thoughts with you. Could you please tell us a little bit about your upbringing in general, in music in general?
It's a pleasure to be here, Dr. Montes. I have a deep, warm, passionate feeling about Loyola University and the program here. For me, it's very special in many ways, and I've been able to observe it over the past 20 some odd years, and I have a lot of respect and love for the program, so I feel privileged to be able to be here, to be a part of it.
Thanks for being here.
And so my own background, my parents neither went beyond the 6th grade, and they were both children of immigrants. My father's family came from Poland, and my mother's family came from the Ukraine. And but they brought that European heritage of all people just loving music. So it was not in a big way part of our household. My father had a little grocery store. My mother did play the piano a little bit, but that was kind of a background. And I lived I was born and raised in South Bend, Indiana. And where I lived was a very interesting community. My peers, for the most part, were either first-generation children of immigrants, Polish, Hungarian, Belgium, because Studebaker factory imported shiploads of Polish workers, Singer sewing machines imported shiploads of Hungarians. And then the other important one for me was the African-American population who had come up from the South. And of course, it was an integrated union. And they kind of were my friends because I'm Jewish, and the Hungarians and Polish were primarily Catholic in those days, and their parents were anti-Semitic. And so in the early days, I got picked on, and of course the Ku Klux Klan was very strong. And of course they also picked on the African Americans. So they became my friends, which had their flaws. But all of them loved music. I learned so much I learned to start playing the violin as a kid. And the Hungarians, oh, you're a gypsy, you know. Yes, and the violin was important. And the folk music of the Polish. And I enjoyed, and I played with some of my African-American friends on different things in the gospel and spiritual music. So I had this combination, but I was so lucky. I had a wonderful violin teacher who kind of became my surrogate father. My father wasn't particularly as my mother was, but this violin teacher took an interest in me and thought I was talented. And I studied with him all through high school. That's cool. So playing the violin and then the viola became a very important part of my life. And it was my claim to prestige because I wasn't a star football player. You know? And then through my teacher, I was able to get my parents lost everything in the Depression. See, I graduated in high school in '34, and we didn't have any money. And I wanted to go to college, and neither of my parents knew much about colleges or anything, you know, just their business. And he got me a scholarship at a little college in Kentucky where I could afford to go to school. And that was started my life.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So that's kind of it.
That's great. Well, how did your interest in, I would say, in people in general, as an educator? I think we are involved in working with young people, the community, making some kind of contribution in society in general. Where does that spark came from to the education interest and the people interest, and then resolving into all the things that you did through that?
You know, I think I'm trying to think these things through. You know, there are so many factors that influence you, and the presence of what I call intervening variables. Mm-hmm. You never know all the, you know, nothing is simple.
Yes.
It becomes complex. But I think with these kids, where they kind of reflected, like in the Hungarian Polish population, the attitude of their parents, which was conditioned strictly by their background in Europe. Mm-hmm. They were programmed to think that way for lots of reasons. But as we grew up together and began to share our own values, whether it was playing softball or playing marbles or making music together or singing, you begin to know and love each other and being together and that feeling of together. And I would see these changes take place at these time I was in high school, you know, dear friends. I decided that I wanted to be a school teacher. Mm-hmm. Very early in life, I said, I just want to be a teacher and help people. Because I would see how much I was helped and what a difference it made, and saw the need of these other kids who were good kids. Mm-hmm. I believe in people, needed help, and they weren't getting it. Mm-hmm. And so that was my mission, was to be some kind of a teacher. Where I went to school, I had a scholarship for playing, but because they wanted a student string quartet and other things. You know.
You're talking about college, where you went to college? Yeah.
But they didn't have really a music department to study with. And so where at first I thought I wanted to major in math, and the teacher was very good. There was a good history teacher in political science. And so I liked his teaching, so I graduated. I went to Transylvania College for 2 years and followed a teacher at University of Kentucky and graduated with an education degree in history and political science, but I always played.
Always played.
Yeah.
Music.
And I ended up going back into music. Mm-hmm. And so there was that kind of a background of wanting to teach and work. And I'm so glad I ended up in music. And I've loved my job. It's always been with education and always working with young people. Mm-hmm. I think people in music, frankly, and those who are in teaching and playing at the same time are the most blessed people on earth. Because it's a wonderful life. And I don't know anybody who is involved in enthusiastic teaching music and working and playing who is not happy with what they're doing, even though some of them can be quite neurotic. But there is a, you know, Joan, all human beings, I think, have the capacity for aesthetic values. The subjective, the connotative, rather than just the denotative. Every culture has an aesthetic expression, even with the most common people in rural, isolated areas. Recipes, cooking, dancing, singing, no matter what. And you realize that part of being a human being and having a meaningful life, besides the survival level of having enough to eat and sleep and protection, is a reason for living. Mm-hmm. And that's this aesthetic value system, the spiritual values that come with that. Yeah. All cultures have it. And music, for me, is the important ingredient in that culture. Now, I have this isn't exactly related to your question,
That's okay.
but as a public school teacher, and then working with youth orchestras and related to music education. See, I taught in the public schools for a good number of years, like you did, and then went to the college level later on. I have only one objective in my instrumental music education program, only one objective. And that is to give every youngster who wants to play and who is playing the opportunity to be good enough that when he graduates from high school, he can say, do I want to be a musician, no matter teaching or playing, or do I want to be an engineer? Do I want to be a musician or a lawyer, a musician or business administration? Go through all those others. If he does his academics, he doesn't have to make up his mind until he graduates. But he can't go into music unless he's had the discipline of developing skills in music. So that when he's in high school, you have to be good enough to be able to make that decision. You can't decide when you graduate from high school, you know, I kind of like music. I think I want to be a musician. And no, you can't do it. But you can do all those other things.
All those other things, yes.
So there is that factor of developing the discipline, which we know is so good. Because, you know, music in the schools, that doesn't mean everyone should go into it professionally. But the uniqueness from music, from an educational standpoint, it's the only thing that I know of which has the balance of immediate gratification and delayed gratification. Most of the things in education, you know, English, math, sciences, is delayed gratification. Music is, and there are a lot of things you do, athletics, entertainments, are only immediate without long-range implication. Music has both. Because there's immediate evaluation of your playing performance, and then of accomplishment, and then the sharing, all the emotional things that come with having it fun, but there's also the long-range consequences of that experience. And so music is a unique presence, I think, an opportunity in lives. But we as teachers have the responsibility, not for everybody. I think everybody's talented, as long as physically they can do it. I don't believe in inheritance, frankly. I believe in what Suzuki says. I think God gave us all
the opportunity, if we take it.
I kind of like what Suzuki says. The first time I met him, which was his first tour in this country, where he said, in observing the American music education system, he says, I have a feeling you wait until your young people are 9 or 10 or 11, and you give them some kind of a test to see who has any talent left. He says, in Japan, we take them when they are 3 and still all very talented. And I like that.
That's good.
So I want to see that they have the opportunity. And I think we do a pretty good job of getting kids started and on that immediate level. Unfortunately, I think there's a financial penalty for getting an artist with the cost of private lessons. And so I'm concerned about that, that we give them the opportunity to be as good as they can be. And that's my objective in education, is to not impose it, but the opportunity for young people. Because the whole concept of our democracy is that everybody should have the opportunity of making a choice. And I don't want to deny anyone the opportunity of choosing music if they want that. And if they are good enough to make that choice when they graduate from high school, music will always be a part of their lives, no matter what they do. You know, we know that. Playing chamber music, going to concerts, just enjoying music, appreciation, record collection. It has a lot of ramifications. One of my closest friends in Madison, his name is Jim Crow, is a world-known geneticist. He did all the research in Hiroshima and Nagasaki after World War II in Japan. A magnificent viola. 2 weeks ago at age 94, he played a full viola recital.
Wow, age 94.
You know, he and I were stand partners in the Madison Symphony for 16 years. But he's a geneticist, well known. And of course, we know that across the board. When I was a kid growing up, the city of Chicago had two so-called amateur orchestras. One was made up completely of doctors. And doctors in South Bend would go to Chicago for the rehearsal once a week. And they also had a businessman's orchestra. Cleveland also had a doctor's orchestra. Now, they were generally children of European immigrants. We don't have it anymore because that heritage has been lost. But I see our kids, so many wonderful string players and clarinet players, graduate from high school who can go into music, who are doctors, lawyers, scientists today, but they love music and they're so glad that they took the time and the discipline that it took to learn to play well, because the way it enriches their whole lives.
That's great.
And that goes for all the arts. It goes for not only music,
well,
but all the aesthetic values and experiences.
And that's what I wanted to talk to you about, because it's always interesting how a youngster that is in the transition period, I would say, trying to decide what they're going to do, and then having to deal with the reality of life and the parents in the mix. What kind of advice you would have for a parent that has a child who's making that decision into getting into either music education or arts education, or in music or in the arts in general, or in the music business in general? What would you tell them, the parents? What would you tell a parent and the kids? You know, what is your thoughts on that?
I realize this is a controversial area. I think we're very fortunate. I don't think I can answer that completely, except we are very fortunate in the United States as compared to Europe and Japan, which subsidizes music a great deal. In Germany, there's no matter the cost of learning to play the instrument because of state subsidies in the orchestras. And the same is true in Japan and in generally across Europe, Russia and all. So that's a different thing. But generally speaking, it's beginning to change. In those countries, you have to commit closure when you're still quite young. Because of the school and education system, by the time you're in the 9th grade, you have to decide whether you're going to be an engineer or a musician. We are blessed that we don't have to commit closure.
That's important.
We can do all these things as long as we have a good, broad educational, academic background in our school and make our grades. You can go into most any profession you want besides music. So, and even I've known like me, this couldn't have happened in Europe. I didn't go into music professionally until after I graduated from college. But I had played and I had enough background, and I have a master's and a doctorate in music. That's unique.
That's unique.
That's very unique to this country. So that the parents, we know that they know the music experience is a good thing. Now, the going into it professionally just depends on so many other factors. And a lot of it depends on the parents' attitude, My father just wanted me to go into business like he did. My mother didn't care what I did as long as I did it, you know. And of course, there were a lot of parents who talked their kids out of music because they say you can't make a living at it. Well, okay, I could have been an airline pilot, you know, and because I was a pilot in World War II, and I would have made a whole lot more money than I would be teaching.
Then you would teach.
And right after the war, I decided to go back to music. I went back to Loyola, teaching the public schools at $1,800 a year, when I probably in 2-3 years could be making $30,000 a year, you know, as a pilot. As I would take flights on airplanes, they used to, in the old days, have the name of the pilot and the co-pilot on the board. I say, oh, there's Jim Smart. We were together in Burma, or we taught together in Tuscaloosa, or we were in the same outfit in Memphis, the firing group. So I would tell the stewardess to tell Jim Marvin Rabin sitting there, and they would always invite me up to the cockpit. So we sit and talk. I wouldn't change my life for anything. They were bored. They were nothing but glorified truck drivers, you know, and they were isolated, didn't have a family. Well, it was exciting. They made good money, and they enjoyed flying. But so you fly, you know. So what else is there, you know, except the challenge of the weather and the things that go with it. And they liked it.
Yes.
But I said, not for me.
No.
So I just want the kids to have an awareness of all the choices that there are and what all the possibilities are. Then they have to weigh it in terms of their own values.
Yes.
And I don't think we can determine that. And the parents can, of course, be very influential. But I'm thinking right now of a family that my wife was a wonderful teacher of young children on piano. She taught 3 to 7-year-olds. And a lot of them went on to be piano majors. And we kept track of them. And then a couple of them also played a string instrument. And I know of 3 families right now, it's right in my mind because it's happened in the last 10 years, who graduated from college as a piano major or as a viola major. There are 4 of them I can name you right now who are doctors.
Yeah.
See, that's an American opportunity.
Yeah.
So, and I like the idea of the discipline that it takes, and the discipline is severe. There's no monkey business there. But the gratification that comes with it. And so no matter what, but by delaying closure, whatever you do, all the other things that you have done become an enrichment resource for your life of what you are doing. Like I can say, if I'd gone into music as an undergraduate, say going to Eastman or Curtis or something like that, I would be a much better player than I got to be. And wouldn't that be a lot better? But having been a major in the social sciences, I saw a very broad cultural, social relationship, which may be more successful with the youth orchestra, because the orchestra is a kind of a crux of a very broad society of many, many disciplines and ethnic values, and it kind of brings it all together. So I understood those relationships, and also having done a lot more with education, you understand that like when you work with youth orchestras, which is what you're doing, you're dealing with a adolescent society. And one of the definitions of adolescent behavior is that they are more influenced by their peers than by their parents. But as a parent, we have control of their peer environment. So by supporting the youth orchestra, you're supporting a value system of peers that you value, which is great for the kids, because like playing Bach isn't like being a star athlete in a high school with your peers. There are very few there that care about Bach, or the fact that you play the violin or the piano. But when you get with the youth orchestra, you're with 60, 80, or 100 kids who share the same value. And it's voluntary. You don't have to do it. They want to come on Saturday or Sunday or evening because they want to share their values with the peers. And it's a wonderful value system of sharing. It's not like gambling or drinking or certain kinds of vices. And so the parents have a responsibility to support that, and the whole community does, because of the influence of the peer influence over the parent influence.
That's great. Well,
it still gives the parents the opportunity to influence, and control. But where you're giving the kids a psychological decision of what they want to do.
Well, that leads again to my next question about the importance of a music-related profession or music-related profession in terms of education experience, arts education, the importance of that for the society in general, and I think, it's taking it in a bigger, broader perspective. What, in your view, what is the importance of us, making sure that this generation is aesthetically stimulated? What is the general, the big picture in your mind? What is the importance of it, and why is that relevant?
Well, as I've said, I think all cultures and all people of varying ethnic backgrounds and cultural backgrounds have a need and the necessity of creating the opportunity for the aesthetic values. That which is not really practical. And that goes for the museums and the arts, spiritual values, and the symphony orchestras and the quartets and all the other things. So there is a need for all people for an aesthetic value. And the orchestra and making music is so universal, but it has different expressions, in different countries. You can go, of course, I don't regard, say, the African cultural situation. I don't like the word primitive. It's wrong. It's an expression of their own respective culture. And the virtuosity that we're beginning to find out these people have, is amazing. Or you go to China with the ancient instruments, what they do, in Japan, let alone we're pretty much geared to the European tradition. We were brought, because most of our immigrants in those early days came from Europe. But now we're beginning to realize more and more about the aesthetic disciplines of the Orient, China, India, Japan. Each has its own uniqueness, but it becomes an enrichment of our uniqueness. And so America is kind of a composite that's very unique across the world in terms of the presence of varying ethnic values. And instead of being linear and fighting each other, it becomes a rainbow where you enrich each other rather than feel that your own one is being threatened by another one. We welcome that presence to enrich our own. And music is capable. You know, look at it's still classical music, and we still kind of a European tradition. But what some of the Japanese composers have done to change our composition concepts of today, and what some of the American composers have been influenced by studying Chinese music, you know, in their own composition or performance styles.
Yeah. Oh,
but the
jazz
symphony
also,
orchestra is still, and the chamber music is still our thing. And I can remember when a professional symphony orchestra, there were maybe 3 or 4 orchestras that paid a living. Everyone else was part-time. And I look at the development since World War II. It actually started under Roosevelt in the 30s, where the WPA projects, the same kind of thing Obama's trying to do, subsidize unemployed musicians. Because what happened at that time, which was unique, the one big profession of making a living for performing musicians was vaudeville. See, there wasn't talking pictures. You had silent pictures, and every movie house had a vaudeville show with a pit orchestra. And you always knew that was a full-time job. My father encouraged me to play the violin only because the director of the Palais Royal vaudeville show was a violinist. And my dad would say, hey, he makes $120 a week. That's a good job. Go for it. So it had a different, and that was our background. And those, with talking pictures now, those people were out of work. And so Roosevelt, part of the WPA, was developing these community orchestras. And look at the hundreds of orchestras we have in the country today, and big ones. When I first went to Boston, the first chair people in the Boston Symphony, this is back in the 50s, were making, which was good money then, $20,000 a year. And I made just $10,000 a year teaching at Boston University. Now players in that orchestra make $80,000 to $100,000 a year.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's amazing.
It was interesting. Jerry Fishbach, who was head of strings at the University of Maryland, his son on his first job got into the San Francisco Symphony at $80,000. Now Jerry has a doctorate. He wouldn't change his life, but he was just making $60,000. So the orchestra, but there's big competition. Big and 50 years ago, probably all our players came from Europe. We didn't have enough American players. But now, Chicago Symphony, a violin job is open, 300 qualified people applied for it. So the competition is stiff.
It's stiff.
But there's still opportunity on the college level, and there is a great need for good instrumental teachers, particularly strings, on the public schools. It's a big field, and it pays. You got security, but you'll never get real rich, but you have a rich life. Because there's opportunity, like in the Madison's. Well, when I was playing in the Louisville Symphony, I was teaching the public schools. I have an 80-piece orchestra. 40 of the players in the Louisville Symphony in those days were public school instrumental teachers. And so they had a double salary. And you go to Texas, places like Amarillo, the schools and the symphonies combine together to hire people because they want players for the orchestra and they want people, and that makes for better players. And it gives them not only a sense of comradeship with the other players and the other teachers, but the challenge of wanting to play means that you keep growing. When you stop growing, you start dying. Period. And so it's a matter, and that's one of the challenges of teaching and making music. It's not like being a quarterback, you know. At 40, you're just about finished. So what do? You know, you keep growing all your life, even though maybe your playing isn't as good when you get much older, but your musical growth and your insights keeps going. And I think that's one of the great things about being in music, that people need to understand.
Well,
that you keep growing until you die.
You die. Very good. Well, I wanted to thank you very much for willing to do this. Any final advice you would have for music, anybody in the music business in general, in conclusion of this, any final advice you have? A couple words of advice. Some principle that you live by, something you're willing to share.
Well, what you just said, Dr. Montes, always share.
Always share.
And share with lots of people and lots of friends and lots of ideas.
Yes.
There's so many things to share. You have to recognize it's a challenge. And it's a discipline. And it can be a severe discipline. But it has rewards now and long range. And it's hard work. But, you know, making music and listening to music that you once learned to make, like the concert I heard yesterday, is an emotional, passionate experience. It's a healthy experience. So you have a chance of expressing and feeling passion that you don't have to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
That you can be proud of.
Great.
And that doesn't just come on its own, like drinking. You know, it comes as a result of a certain discipline that you have to earn the opportunity to feel that way.
Yeah.
It can't just be given to you.
Yeah.